Hey guys, it's Calvin, and picking your first programming language can sometimes be a difficult feat. You may not know where to start or which programming language you want to learn first, but in this video I want to go over some tips to help you pick your first programming language. And these are just things I've picked up throughout my years of studying programming and developing things, and hopefully they'll help you out as well. And I'll also go over some recommendations for certain languages depending on what you want to do, whether you want to go into mobile app development, web development, data science, or something else. So tip number 1, this is 11. So tip number 1, think about what you want to do when you learn your programming language. Think about what career you want to go into or what projects you want to build, and try to research those fields and see what languages are popular. Do you want to do web development? Do you want to create mobile apps? Do you want to go into IT, hardware, or data science, or AI, or machine learning, or whatever? Look into those fields and just Google what programming languages are popular. And if you know exactly what field you want to go into, just learn the most popular language in that field. For an example, if you want to do web development, for sure, learn JavaScript. If you want to do mobile app development for Apple, learn Swift. Tip number 2, if you have absolutely no programming background or very little programming background, don't pick a difficult language. Sometimes people get this mindset that if they can master this really difficult thing first, then everything else will be pretty easy. And to some extent that is true, but you're gonna spend a lot of time learning really difficult syntax and concepts when instead you really should be focusing on understanding programming fundamentals, using variables and constants, using conditional statements, working with arrays, data structures, writing good algorithms, understanding object-oriented programming, and so much more. So for an example, don't go into programming thinking you want to learn C++ first, and if you can master C++, then everything else will become super easy. Instead, pick a language that's not too difficult, but maybe not too easy either, to give you a good challenge. That way you'll kind of set the baseline for every other language that you'll learn throughout your programming course. So my recommendation for that type of a language is almost always Java, and I'll get to that a little later in the video. Tip number 3. Spend time learning your first language. Your main objective at this point as a complete beginner is to understand how programming works, not to just learn as many languages as possible. So spend time learning your first language really slowly, but as in much depth as you can. So you want to make sure you're learning it slow and you're learning it well. And it could very well take you anywhere from a few months to maybe even a year to get really good at one language. But don't let time scare you, because once you learn that first language over an extended period of time, picking up other languages will become a lot quicker because you've already understood the fundamentals and basics of programming and understand how programming actually works. Every other language after that is just syntax for the most part. And also, don't fall for the learn Java in 2 weeks, become a master. No, you can't learn anything in 2 weeks. Those courses might give you a skim of what Java is or whatever other programming language offers, but really you want to get into that language and you want to build a good foundation for the rest of your programming career. There are a lot of courses and online resources that will help you learn your first language, so spend time researching it and learning it. Tip number 4, understand that programming is a tool. Once you start familiarizing yourself with your first language, understand that it's a tool. You use programming languages to do things or to build stuff. Maybe a few months in after you started learning your first language, try building something with it. For an example, if you're learning JavaScript for web development, try building websites. Remember, programming is a tool. You want to use that tool to build stuff. And when you do that, you actually understand the programming language a lot better. Programming languages are kind of like tools. For an example, a hammer. You don't want to just learn to use a whole bunch of different hammers. You want to use those hammers to build something. So if you can, use that programming language, use your knowledge of just a few months or even a few weeks to try to build something. And don't be afraid of failing. Really, it's not a big deal. I always tell people that life is like one of those metal puzzles that you're trying to figure out, and you have to keep working at this puzzle, keep trying new things, keep failing, and eventually it'll work itself out and you'll be able to solve the puzzle. So that's the same thing with programming. I guess this is a hidden tip. Don't be afraid to fail. Really, you'll be okay. So what tip are we on? 5, I think. I don't know. Who cares? I'll just go into some recommendations for languages depending on what you actually want to do with them. So if you want to go into web development, front end, back end, learn JavaScript. JavaScript is everywhere on the web. It is a very popular language, and you really can't go wrong learning JavaScript, especially if you want to do web development. So how about mobile apps? What if you want to develop applications for iPhones or Android phones? Well, if you want to learn Android development, I would suggest learning Java or Kotlin. Java has been the primary language for Android development for a very long time, and Google just announced their recent support of Kotlin for Android Studio. So my suggestion, if you want to learn Android development, I would actually suggest learning Java first. Once you understand Java, Kotlin will come pretty easily for the most part. Now, if you want to create mobile apps for iPhone and iOS devices, learn Swift. Swift is a really modern Apple language that's used to create iPhone apps, Apple Watch apps, iPad apps, and a lot more. And Apple has some great documentation and online resources on their developer site, so definitely go and check that out. And once you know Swift pretty well, then you can go on and learn Objective-C, which was the language used before Swift to develop iPhone apps. So what if you want to create Windows software like desktop applications or even Windows Phone applications? Learn C#. C# is a really great language used for Windows software development and many other software. If you want to get into data science or machine learning, I would highly suggest Python. Python is a really popular programming language used in those fields, and it's only increasing in popularity. And it's actually not too difficult to learn. It would be a really great beginner's language. Now, if you have absolutely no idea which language you want to learn or what you want to get into, and you're like, Calvin, I have no idea what I want to do, but you're really serious about programming, then the language that I recommend to people as their first programming language is Java. Java is still really popular. It's a really amazing language. It's pretty well rooted, and it's everywhere. It's on your mobile apps, it's on your websites, it's on your desktop software, it's in the closet watching you as you sleep. But in all seriousness, Java is a really great programming language, and it's pretty well rooted and came out in the 90s sometime, and it's had time to work out a lot of its bugs. Is it perfect? No programming language is perfect, but it's a really good place to start. It was actually my first real object-oriented programming language that I learned and used. I did know other object-oriented programming languages before Java, but I never really used those capabilities in those languages. And for whatever reason, I just fell in love with Java. I also had a really good textbook that I used, and I'll go ahead and link that textbook down in the description below. But really, if you don't know where to start, I would absolutely recommend Java. It's going to build a really good foundation for you to learn other programming languages. It's a language that's not too difficult, but it's not too easy either. So it's going to provide you a really good challenge and a really good foundation in learning other programming languages. And of course, there are a ton of resources online. There's communities, there's forums, there's documentation, tutorials, videos. There's just so much that you can use to learn Java. So once you've picked your first programming language, the most important thing is to first just start learning it. Start doing tutorials, pick up the syntax, try some coding challenges. But the most important thing about your first language is to practice it. Continuously practice it and get better and better and better at it. And more important than that, stay consistent with learning your programming language. It's only going to help you out in understanding programming fundamentals when you learn other programming languages. So I'll leave links to all the programming languages that I mentioned, as well as a really good textbook that I personally used for learning Java. And if you guys have any questions or more recommendations, really this video is just helping people choose their first programming language. Leave those recommendations down below. Leave the questions down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. There's actually a programming language called LOL Code. That's pretty funny.